Excuse me. Hey. Hi.
We don't want to mess with your system.
My system?
Janone said that this was your system, so we didn't want to.
have a system.
We didn't want to pile everything up and make you lose your place where you were at.
I don't even know my own system. Wow.
We can figure it out too.
Goodness gracious. Let me grab my stuff here.
Looking back on it, the weight of it should have told me that there was something. That was important.
He's coming for me tonight.
So Pokey's sitting on this side and then Lorenz is sitting on this side, but I believe Pokey's down.
Got it. Where do you want me to sit down? I can sit over there.
Yeah, wherever you would like.
Let's see.
I'll leave your Scott packet there. Where do you want me to put it?
What is this?
Those are, I don't know, there's quarters though that fill out. I'm not sure, I think that's kind of.
Oh, some of that stuff. Whoops.
So you didn't clean out yet.
Yeah.
We got our gentleman figured out.
And when you have a chance, if you write that down so we have that, and then we can. Oh, okay. Thank you. I can grab it from there.
I had to call him, but he wouldn't put us in. And the phone's broken out there too, by the way, so I need to.
The phone's broken?
They took the battery out of the handheld, so it doesn't do you any good. It's,
Okay.
so he, got him connected to some soup and chili all in case. Yes, ma'am.
I did not find a folder that has the resolutions in it. There's a folder on the No, because I saved it, the resolution the other day when I typed it, and I could not find it.
Hey.
It was an active or something. So, section. Okay, so
Yeah.
so it looks like this house is 106. Right now, or their first property. That's who I got this from.
Right, but what I'm saying is if it's 108 house, this neighbor's gonna have another one here. So, we'll go
So I can
108,
see, I can see,
A, B, and C.
okay, so I can, so I can see Clover's.
Let me talk to
Dave.
Dave.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Perfect.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Everybody?
Same day. How's your summer been? Grandbaby was here for 2 weeks, so I was, yeah. She's back at med school, but my mom flew back to New Jersey this morning because she's doing residency in Chicago, and he's here with the little one, and then she does, they have to pay double rent from New York, and then place, like $6,000 total, like I'm gonna have a heart attack as a mother. And then she's there for a month, and then they go back for a month, and then she goes to Rochester, New York to decide if she wants to there for a month, and then 2 other spots, and then she matches her list, and then that's where she'll end up for 4 years. So he's hoping Omaha or Chicago. I am, but she likes living out there. She's like, oh, I'm home, I love it here. I'm like,
My brother lives in New York.
she's 20 minutes. She lives like on the Hudson that she lives. I'm just like, you know how much money you're spending? Like, you're nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I'm like, but she's gonna be the art surgeon, so it's like, I mean, but yeah, but you have, I would love Chicago, so because I could be on the plane in 45 minutes. So yeah, so I have enjoyed it. It's been nice to have just time with the grandbaby. He's so nice. Well, the first ones always are. Then don't ask about my other child. Yours is growing up fast, so. Are you done?
So Austin's.
I should have stopped there once. Someday I'll tell you. Right now we have her dog and her cat because she's doesn't have a place to live, and so she's staying with a friend while she's finishing up her school year. That I'm like, I have 5 dogs and 3 cats because of my children in the house.
They're already in here.
He was picking them all for us today, so I'm sure he'll eat it. I know, that's what he said. He's like, okay, so he dropped off his truck. He dropped off his touring truck. It was 100 degrees in the truck, and it smells like and I keep pushing the girl, and she's like, I can still know that. That won't be a burnt
Well, thank you.
which, who cares? I mean, and I'm like, I just want to go to work. They just posted orders, and she's like, I don't want to be
See, Autumn's going on the cruise, and I get to have the baby for the whole week. So then I get, so I'm like,
I'll get the other one.
she's going to Italy and Greece and do something from like, I'm like, do that. I'm like, yep, you can fly me out there. I'll stay for the week. I'll be fine.
We're doing their first night big crazy vacation for Disney cruise for the littles. No, really? Yes, because in order to be 5 in a room, then you had to get another little room.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, why?
Okay, lady, how are we?
Our regular shape. Hi. What do you
Why
like
you
this
get
year?
your trying like pay for it, thinking like they would invite me? No.
I'm Ryan Johnson, I'm the mayor. Ryan, good to see you all. You betcha I can. I know where it is. I think so. Janana is like the issues.
These are kind of important.
We got 2 on the screen. I had Hannah just call into the Zoom number. That way you can.
Yeah, I'm here. Hannah's out, Christy here.
Hi, Hannah.
And Lauren is on the.
Oh,
Hi, Lauren.
I'll just stay on until about 5:15 and then it's supper time at church camp.
Okay.
Well, thanks for making it.
Yep, thanks, Lauren.
I think Homer said he's on it, but he's probably. We're gonna go ahead and get started, or wait till.
And I think we got a quorum, so we have to.
Go ahead. Okay. All right. Well, we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I have to make a statement out that Christy is out of town, out of the state for now, and so as mayor pro tem, I've assumed her role in this position to proceed over tonight's meeting. So we'll go ahead and take. I know we normally don't do this, but I think for the purpose of this, we'll go ahead and take a roll call just to make sure we know who everybody's here. The record. So Nicole Harrison, Mayor Pro Tem in this role, City Council Member Pocahontas.
West Benton City Council.
W. Wall City Council.
Kim Blaine, City Council.
Brian Stoll, City Council.
Rob Johnson, Mayor.
Chloe Reed, City Administrator, Lorenz.
Mayor Christensen, City Council, Friends.
I think Janon Douglas, our interim city clerk, will be joining us up here at the table as soon as she gets herself down there. So, do you want to announce who's on the Zoom there?
We have Hannah Zelstra, City Council, and Lauren Booth, City Council.
Again, this is my first especially joint meeting, so I don't know how it works if you guys need to do your own call to order or.
No, I think we need to do that.
All right, so we'll make a motion, or I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
One thing I forgot, the amendment for the resolution, we're on the wrong resolution was listed, so we're on resolution 24 instead of 23.
Yes.
Do you wanna?
Yes, so I make a motion to amend resolution number to 24.
Are you still on the second?
I will second that motion.
So motion by Kim, seconded by Cody to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Moving on to the discussion. So I think the big thing tonight is being able to have an open conversation pertinent to the 2080 and address concerns that may exist, address what's going well and making sure that we continue to foster that. And just kind of having, again, that direct conversation so everybody knows kind of where we're landing and see if we can kind of make amendments or continue with what's worded to make sure everybody feels heard and supported. And so I would like to preface getting started by saying that we should all kind of make sure that we're doing what's best for our citizens and that any discussion, any questions raised are not personal in any shape or form. I think everybody should just, again, speak with intention to make sure you're doing what's best for your city and your citizens that you represent, as well as representing or, fostering a relationship with surrounding communities that are in the same situation. So, that being said, we'll go ahead and get started with the discussion.
Can I just give you the one update for the number that the city council didn't have? Janon had just given it to me here at the beginning, so just to give that. So the unbilled portion, other than I haven't done this quarter's billing, is that half of my IPERS is $5,073.77. The health insurance half, she says for the city, is my monthly is $3,314.77, which then breaks down to a half of that over 12 months is $19,888.62, and then life insurance would be $260, and the disability is $260.04. So that's what still needs to be billed out. And like I said, I haven't done fourth quarter yet because we billed fourth quarter of last year, which wasn't a complete quarter, and so that would be in addition to the $62,000 that we've already received. And some change. So, and then just to kind of steer that in there, and I think probably the best thing, and since Ryan is here, I mean, he did make some, and I think there's some very good things in his 28E that might help some of the concerns over liability and those things. Obviously, it would be tough to obviously rewrite everything tonight, not meaning we could. So what I would hope to see is that I like what Ryan has written. Obviously, we would need to pass it to Lorenz, the city attorney, but I think all those things in there should consider. The one thing, Ryan, that I had for you just as a question was, in that agreement, did it also cover Lorenz covering Pocahontas? Because the way I read it, it was only Pocahontas officers covering Lorenz.
It does not, because I was not aware that that was a thing, but that would be easy enough to add. It's just a reciprocal paragraph at that point, so.
Right, and I think, and the only other, the two concerns that I had with it, which were very much minutia, was that in some of the terminations, so it says, should the police chief leave, but that one gives 30 days. I would still think we would push for that 90 days should be the consistent, in this new 2080. So I know I sent it off to Hillary. I don't know how many from Lorenz have it. But
honestly, I really didn't sit down at my computer until about 3:30 to check my email, so I forwarded it on, and they just got a copy now.
Right. So I think that I think that was my big concern. And then the other concern, and I didn't bring it up earlier because if you just kind of work through it, was I like doing it on the quarterly because it's a little easier for me to do, but it's less monthly. So however we want to do that. But those would be my only concerns with it. But I think overall, as an agreement, again, it adds a little more into the liability and the concerns from like the insurance side, and we would get that obviously to Stephanie to prove it at the end of the day. But again, I think as we read it, but I think it kind of shored up a lot of concerns on the liability pieces and some of those things. So.
And so, Brian, I don't know if anyone today has had the chance to look at the edits. Would you kind of summarize what your recommendation and edits were?
Sure, do you want me to go up there, or I can?
You can almost have putting it
Yeah. My house is a little bit far away from that. Overall, the agreement I think is pretty standard in terms of the paragraphs and the language that's in there. But leave it to any attorney to find something wrong with something or make something more difficult than it ultimately needs to be. The thing that I think my biggest overwhelming concern, if you will, with the document is just when liability would stop, and the scope of the liability, and ultimately how that liability falls on what I'm considering to be two different entities. So one thing that I thought about, I personally thought that should be added, and just so everybody knows, these are just my opinions. I'm not suggesting that it's the way of the world or anything like that. Just some clarification in terms of, if Alex is in Lorenz and he's doing something for the city of Lorenz, and there was some liability created, we wouldn't want necessarily the city of Pocahontas to incur that liability. And now if Alex is here in Pocahontas, we wouldn't want Lorenz to incur that liability. Just something very, just very to the point with that. And then the same thing goes with, there's not a lot that addresses other officers that would be in Lorenz. I think that maybe this started off as just mostly dealing with Alex, and then it kind of migrated into something else. And I don't know that the document says, hey, if we have an officer in Lorenz and they're doing something for Lorenz, and there's liability created, then Pocahontas shouldn't be on the hook for that sort of liability. The other thing that I wanted to put in there, and I don't know that the wording is perfect or anything like that, is when the liability starts. So in my mind, and I ran this against my partner's judgment today, is you guys make a call, and as soon as the officer leaves city limits, that's technically their jurisdiction. Is that where the liability starts? My argument would be yes, but they're my clients. And the reason why I would say that is if they're, let's say we have a hostile situation and they're driving 100 miles an hour, all the way over there, and hit a car, do something like that between there, hopefully nothing like that would ever happen, but there's liability. So the last thing.
Same would be true coming in.
Yes.
So,
I mean, yes, but no. Depends when the call stops.
I guess what I'm saying is, something big was happening in Pocahontas and one of our officers.
Correct. Yes, sorry, I didn't
As
understand
soon
the
as we
question.
left town, it's, right, just same.
And that's what Chief Lou was talking about, is I was not aware when I drafted this that Lorenz was coming to Pocahontas. That paragraph's not in there, but if that's the case, then I would want that paragraph in there as well. But
I don't think that, I think it's reasonable.
and I do too, but there again, it's not really my decision, I just kind of put my thoughts into this agreement. The other thing that I would really like to have is like your equipment. There's nothing in there who's responsible for, if something were to happen to your equipment, and I think that you guys would want some protection with that. If we're using your equipment and those kind of things, and something were to happen, is it our responsibility to replace them? Is it your responsibility? Something that I thought should be kind of addressed. But I do think one of the biggest issues is when the liability starts and stops, mostly from an insurance perspective. What the last thing I want to do is have a good relationship potentially fall apart because we're arguing over who's responsible for some sort of incident that occurred that way. The small issue that I don't know if it's the wording or how it was worded, is the 20-hour and the 21-hour.
Yeah, sorry, Brian. And it's supposed to be 21, and that was my fault because I was going to change it this year and with everything else going on. It should always be 21 because we work technically an 84-hour shift because we're 12-hour shifts. So it should be 21 if we're doing half of,
So the question is kind of the billing side of it. So if we go from 0 to 20 and then we pick up at 21, we have an hour in there where something potentially happened that was unbilled.
And that, so all the billing that was submitted was at the 21 hour.
Okay.
We didn't do the 20 hour and then when we made this, that's my fault.
Okay. So yep, that's no problem. Now I'm not certain with regards to the insurance.
I actually have verbiage from Heath Hockenberry with Jester, who provides, they're the, I don't know how you want to say that, representative for EMC, which both cities have. Last year he stated that it's clear that the equipment of the police chief uses while working for Lorenz is owned by Lorenz, which means their property and auto policies would respond to the claims for those. It's also clear that the police chief is an employee of the city of Pocahontas, which means their work and compensation would cover the applicable coverage regardless of where an injury would occur. The liability coverage is also clearly outlined. I don't have any recommended changes regarding insurance aspects of the agreement.
And that's completely fine. I guess it's always been my practice that if it's not in the four corners of the document, it leaves a lot of uncertainty, and it definitely leaves something to be disagreed with. And
Given that both insurers are the same, could that verbiage be used?
So Hillary, for clarification though, that was referenced when Alex is using your guys' equipment, that it would fall under Lorenz's insurance, correct?
Why working for Lorenz's own, because it doesn't specifically state. I know, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, was there an accident?
So we have the deer hit.
Insurance would follow the vehicle or the equipment. So if it's listed on Pocahontas' policy, it follows Pocahontas' policy. If it's listed on Lorenz policy, it follows Lorenz policy.
And we have drivers from both on, so if someone would
There's
opt in,
duplication.
yeah, so there's duplication there as well. So all the drivers are covered no matter what. And when I always submit that, when we hire new, or actually when they pass their class to become drivers, then.
Well, and maybe the verbiage just needs to be something of that sort with the additional, if it is your equipment and it's damaged and we pay the deductible.
Right, and that's exactly what city did. And they also provided us a police car until we got the second officer hired. So we actually, for over a month, and we should have been able to have it fixed in that time, but then that was, as I explained to the council, we had a huge problem with trying to find somebody who actively was ready to fix it. And then once we did, it took like 2 weeks.
yeah, and I get that EMC covers both, and I guess that was one question I had. Is there any, is there any way to get them to insure both together to save money, or how? I mean, is there anything like that out there for? I guess for.
That'd probably get messy. Yeah.
I mean,
We could always explore, but I'm not sure.
But regardless, those are kind of my main points. I did provide the red line, and then I also provided, some proposed changes on just the scope and those kind of things for you.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
I will say this, I appreciate your comments. I do know anytime we've talked with our attorney about the insurance and how it relates to how EMC would handle it, he always refers me back to EMC, our agent, Keith, or the underwriter. Our attorney defers to the insurance on how they would handle it.
So Steph, can you ask the attorneys for EMC on how they want to handle it? As far as, each town is responsible for their own vehicles and whatnot.
So,
Because if a claim goes to court, it's gonna be the EMC attorney, right?
correct.
I think there's some, just to be clear, I think there's some misunderstanding of what actually happens when you provide verbiage to an insurance company. I think there's this theory that you provide this document to some insurer and they vet it to the nines. They're not going to do that for you. They're going to gloss over it. They're going to run it through underwriting to see if there's any major things, and then they're going to say yay or nay. But their responsibility is not to represent Lorenz or Pocahontas. I mean, they could give you some verbiage if they've used it in a different agreement perhaps, or had an issue come up or want something specifically put in there. But that's been I've worked with numerous insurance companies. They're always happy to look at it, but very rarely are they like, oh, by the way, I would change this word, and you might want to add a paragraph here or anything like that.
Right, and I think what Hillary has from Jester is they reviewed it and they said, the document says this, here's who's responsible for this, here's who's responsible for this, and.
Well, what you'd said earlier was pretty clear cut, I think.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
if it's a vehicle, whoever owns it has the liability.
Right, and if it's an employee, whatever city is paying them, that would be, and they got injured, that's the city's policy that would.
Unless you
follow.
muddy that up, it's pretty clear. I mean,
Correct,
so.
correct.
I think we're getting hung up on the insurance here, and in reality, I mean, the concern from our side of things is that if a car or an officer or both or whatever have you is injured or incapacitated or harmed or something of that nature, sued, whatever, that is a cost of Pocahontas to incur providing a service to Lorenz and vice versa. Lorenz is over here and something happens, you guys are paying for something that happens in our city. And so while that should be a concern on both cities' parts, I think diving into that and maybe segregating that out would get a little gray, just because there's certain options that exist where mutual aid would have to occur no matter what. And I think to make that definition of when is it on Lorenz to respond to a call in Pocahontas because it's an emergency mutual aid that everybody's coming to, versus when is it on Pokey to cover Lorenz's equipment because they're just providing backup, would be a really hard thing to differentiate. So that's on both sides of the matter. I don't know which way to go about tackling that, but I do hear that it's a valid concern. It's one of my concerns as well, of that cost increasing. I don't know how far you want to dive into that though.
I think one thing is, the shared personnel really, by and large, is the chief. And early on, we had no officers because we had no chief. And since then, we've been able to add 2 officers, and we're looking at a 3rd. And so I would say it would be really a rare situation for you to be in Pocahontas with an officer other than Alex coming to do administrative things. Am I right on that, by and large?
Yes and no, I mean, I
If
think
something
it's,
big was happening, you probably would have been there anyway.
Well, I
but
think
it was
this
something
agreement
big, definitely.
has been, I mean, our understanding, the way it's been presented, at least my interpretation, is that when you read this agreement, it's not structured around shared police chief services. And honestly, I've heard from multiple parties involved that they don't want it to be, and I can understand where that is coming from. It's a lot easier for either department to take time off, something happened, parental leave, whatever that may be, and know that you're able to divide that work up with more colleagues and not just putting it on whoever is remaining in your service. So I understand that part of it, but I don't think it's fair to say that 20 hours is, I think that's where there was a misunderstanding even last year, in that 20 hours is not sole police chief sharing. And the way that this agreement is structured is not sole police chief sharing, it's really a sharing of both departments' officers to fill in as needed.
And that is true in the sense that, again, the goal is to draw so that Lorenz's biggest problem was because they weren't getting administrative help. On the flip side of it, in order to then obtain further officers and to do what we needed to do, obviously the officers, and that's why it was built into the agreement, was to help cover those hours when Lorenz was getting calls. Or what we knew is that when Lorenz then we had officers, and we've now used that, I think now like 7 times just in this last quarter, where Lorenz has covered for us, which has then been at no expense to us, but an expense for their operational side. So, I mean, again, I would anticipate those types of situations, obviously, to continue on.
So let me ask you this, because this is where my expertise, I don't have a law enforcement background, I don't want to have a law enforcement background, so let me defer to you in asking, when I look at it, I'm gonna say this, and this is not the intention, but this is the most direct way to ask this question. Like, why is this agreement necessary when an option exists that you could be hired part-time and we can hire, each city can hire each respective officers part-time as well? And we have that option to still cover. We have your option if you're hired part-time by Lorenz for a police chief, they have a chief, they have administrative oversight, you can make a contract with them as far as what they want that to look like. We know that our officers' salaries are preserved and not affected because of wages we've already discussed. And then we still have the option that exists that each city has each other's officers hired part-time to fill in should shifts arise.
Okay, so the problem with that becomes is the fact that if the officer is then part-time, so we still have our shifts to fill. Our time is still our time. So those officers are working out. So we have an officer maybe having a new baby or whatever. They're gonna have to utilize that part-time time when they would be with their family. They have to do that on their days off. This agreement allows us to do that while they're already working. Again, what we call the service capacity, right? It's just like using we're already running vehicles, so vehicles are running. We have officers on duty that are potentially not engaged in any other thing other than potentially maybe watching some traffic or whatever, or again, just what sometimes happens with us, especially in our current call base is now on the way down where and then citizens come up and talk to us and whatever, or we hand stickers out to kids, or we watch for e-scooters. So all it does is that it provides them with something to engage in that they're already engaging in, but they run up to Lorenz, do that. Lorenz gets billed for that service. They're already getting that. So it provides this. It's no different than the sheriff's office providing coverage for Fonda or Rawl for any of that. It really doesn't change the matter of, in that question, well, why would they just then hire deputies part-time to cover those towns? Well, because the problem is that nobody's going to want to work 100 hours a week, because that's what that theory provides.
Because
you can't work part-time and full-time at the same time.
Right, what I'm saying is that both towns would then be covered, right? So let's say one of our officers has a child and goes on paternal leave. Those shifts stand open. The way that this has been kind of a strong point to this agreement that I've heard over and over is that we now have 2 officers in Lorenz that can help fill those shifts.
Mhm.
So an ability to do that in a capacity of hiring those officers on both sides respectively to fill those shifts still exists without this agreement, correct?
No, because you're now making that officer work an extra 20, 40 hours a week.
We're not making any.
Well, I'm just saying, but
the shift stands open, right?
right, so
And
that,
you'd be in that predicament whether we had Lorenz or we have a handful of part-time and reserve officers anyway. So you're going to be in that predicament regardless of if we had Lorenz or not, but this still gives you the ability to have 2 more officers to call on.
so if I have Nick on shift and I have an officer out on paternity leave, he can't work, and he's working, and he can't cover the Pocahontas shift. So it provides me no benefit. So then Nick is now in his 2 off cycles. So let's say a Wednesday, Thursday shift. He now has to put in 12 hours of extra work at 12 hours a time. So now you're going to, so then that would now, to have that officer cover that shift, he has to work an extra 24 hours a shift. You're not going to get that type of, the officer isn't going to go up and say, hey, I need to go and I'm going to go, well, I need to help Pocahontas because they're going to be short those 2 days. Again, it's going to fall back on me then to be the one to staff it, which, I mean, I guess is an advantage for Pocahontas since they only bill you 1 out of every 6 shifts. But, on the flip side of it, it causes a lot of, it's difficult some days to cover all that time. So, and I do that for those guys so that they actually have time off. Because if they don't have the time off, you're going to spend $45,000 just putting a new officer back on the street. So my problem is that you don't solve your problem. You actually burn that other officer out that's trying to help a lot more.
And I get that, and I think a distinction I probably should have made more clear is that I wasn't expecting them to be on a full-time and part-time shift at the same time for the respective officers. But I think then what you mentioned alludes to that shift is going to be open one way or another. So either we don't have this agreement, the shift's open because we don't have staff to staff it, and vice versa for Lorenz, if that were to be true. Otherwise, a town stands open if we're in this mutual agreement, if they're going whatever city they're in, correct?
You wanna?
I'd say the biggest thing is you're saying I could pick up and cover for them if I wanted to, is my understanding. But then that means we're still burning out because we're working all these extra hours. The benefit would be is Nick could help cover when I'm on maternity leave, so that way all my other coworkers aren't getting burned out working a bunch of extra hours. Yes, our town might not physically have somebody at that exact moment, but the calls are still going to be answered because Nick can cover both towns, just like the sheriff's office covers the whole county. They don't have to physically be there to answer the call.
I see the point you're making. I don't think that it's fair to say that a call wouldn't be answered, regardless of if we or Lorenz or whoever is on shift. I don't think that's fair to say that a call is just not going to be answered.
So the concern is you want somebody in both towns at all times, is what you're saying.
I think that should be the expectation if we can get to it. I mean, I think as a citizen, if I'm paying for a police force, I would expect a presence as often as possible, as close to 100% as we can get it.
Yeah, and I would say that's what we do. We would still try to staff it here. It's just in case life happens. And, Alex has the neck surgery, I'm out with a kid. We're down 2, so you only have 2 guys to cover Pokey. So if we don't have the help.
And on Mason's point there is that, and again, we've had a couple of our reserve officers work the rest. The priority is always, neither town is the default, but if it's needed, it's done. And that's just part of the scheduling. So it's always attempted that both towns, for what they have and what we've agreed to cover, have somebody. We don't just rely on saying, okay, well, I'm not going to ask anybody else to work. So that's not what's happening. And it's never happened.
Well, I think the language of the agreement, and I think the expectation is that anything over 21 hours was really supposed to be at the officer's discretion as well.
when it is. And they go up as needed and evaluate the calls, and if they aren't sure on that call, they evaluate. And it works both ways. They call me on whether I'm at my grandbaby's, whatever, or, so that's just part of what I already contribute to this. I guess, like I said, we're already, I don't know where I'm going with this.
So, Nicole, as I'm kind of trying to listen, and sometimes things are way over my head, so I apologize for my ignorance on Alex. I don't know your job, I don't know scheduling. Nicole, I'm trying to process what you're thinking. What's your biggest concern with when you're talking about the staffing thing? What's the biggest thing you're getting at?
Well, I think, a little bit of semantics, Kim, is like, my concern really doesn't matter, right? My personal concern really doesn't matter.
So for as you're representing your constituents,
what the concerns that I've heard from multiple different conversations is that, one, people want a police presence in our city as much as possible. Two, we want to make sure that, like I've said multiple times, that the cost of doing this agreement is at least net neutral, right? In that we are seeing that amount of money at least back, and our revenue would be wonderful. But I don't think anyone's in this agreement to make money off of it. It's to provide a shared service.
Right.
So at least not that it's net negative. I've heard another large concern of just, like Alex has said, officer retention and making sure that we continue to hold a citywide police force as much as possible, again, for both towns. I think that's important, because that alludes back to the first concern of trying to have a police presence as much as possible. I would also want to say that our officers feel supported and that we are able to continue to not burn them out, and again, probably goes back to a little bit of the officer retention. But at the same time, I don't want either city or either department to be in a situation where they didn't have to be, essentially, right? We've created a lot of opportunities for incidents to happen that wouldn't happen should this agreement not exist.
What incident would that be?
Yeah. Can I query on this a bit?
Yeah.
Revenue neutral. As far as I know, the money's only going one way, right?
There would be a little bit of reimbursement, and it'd be for 7 shifts in fourth quarter, so not.
But it's primarily money coming from Lorenz to Pocahontas. It's not big outflows going the other way.
Can I clarify that though, just so that we can stay all together on one topic rather than, multiple ones going back and forth? I think, yes, it's money coming in, and I think it's a clear distinction that needs to be made though, that there's also costs associated with that money to offset. So just looking at our vehicle maintenance line in our budget, the past 2 fiscal years, we've been under 20,000. This year, we're as of May, which meant that there was still 6 more weeks to be billed in that fiscal year, they were already past 30,000. I think it was like 33,000 in that specific line item in our budget. A claim has been made that theoretically there should be no more wear and tear on our vehicle, there should be more maintenance, but the numbers, granted there's an inflation part of that as well. But
I was gonna say, we reimburse you for that, and that's the intent, and we follow the IRS rate, which is,
Typically
higher to fulfill that cost.
So we know there's a cost there, and we're trying to address that if it can be changed a little bit. In terms, and I'm just going down your thing, you have 4 bullet points here, but having an officer at all times. Now that Lorenz has officers, it's really, what situation would arise where there would be nothing here?
Never, and hasn't been. I've always been able to.
So is it, or has it been a concern, or is it an ongoing concern that there will never be anyone here?
Could there be a chance that there was a slight?
What would that take?
That would take us absolutely having, like we know and we communicate all the time who's where and what and when somebody can be called. We're also enhancing our reserve program to provide even more numbers to that for those call outs because the reserve can operate without that. So at this time and during this entire year, there has not been one call that was left in any significant delay.
You are directing the show, so to speak. Would you ever
7:21, go ahead.
put Pocahontas in a situation where they were left uncovered?
Absolutely not. And again, with my wife sitting here, we took 11 minutes off from my wedding.
Yeah.
That's it.
So with respect to officer retention, this has been a difficult one for us over the years, and we're slightly smaller than, but it's very difficult to retain officers, particularly with the county tends to look, if you got a good one, they're looking at them, and so are the other counties and communities like Algona, Forest City, right, they come and go. So this has allowed us and has allowed you to take some of the money that is coming from this agreement and funnel that down to the officers and raise their pay. The officer retention is a very big positive with this situation. They're making more money and they have, more importantly, the time situation. If somebody is needed to cover, they don't have to pull a double shift. Somebody from Lorenz might come over or go the other way, vice versa. And if you talk to these young, a lot of the officers are young that end up in small towns. When you talk to them, do I get some time off?
Yep.
Do I get any time off? And if you've got 2 officers or 3, it's tough.
Yep.
But if you got somebody on paternity leave or maternity leave, and somebody's sick, and we've got 2 officers sitting up there, and Alex says, "Hey, I can pull this guy over. We're all good," and it's really a nice thing to be able to share. And also with respect to retention and hiring, when I'll just use Lorenz as an example because we've been through this. When you're a 1-2-man force and you go out in the market and you're looking for a chief, and again, you're slightly larger than us, but not a lot. You're in the same market for that. The same people answering our ads are going to answer yours, most likely. And that gets scary. Who wants to come be a 2-man chief and pull extra shifts if they don't have somebody to cover? It just wears on them, and your churn is about every 2 years. If you get 2 years, you're lucky. You've got Alex, he's got a local component here. He's from here.
Right.
Alex passes away, retires, moves on. The next guy probably won't have that. And it's very difficult when you don't have homegrown to retain those people, particularly if you've got a small. So when you have a larger entity, so to speak, that has some sharing, it really takes that burden off and allows not only to hire a better chief, but better officers. They're coming into a larger force. My chances of having some time off are better. I get paid more. Those are the 2 things that it takes to retain those young guys, young women. There's very little with respect to officer retention that can be looked at as a negative. And as far as supporting the officers, I think having buddies next door when something's happening, you've got people that know each other. I think they're going to have each other's back. I really do. I think that's kind of how police are.
Well, I have one standing right back here who was a Pocahontas officer, left for Spencer, and then because of this agreement, came back to Spencer, brought us a certified officer. The other gentleman, what's it? Sorry. But even Jack, Jack I had met outside of all of this due to some other issues or whatever, and Jack heard about this and what I had done for him and helped support him with his own departmental was he chose Lorenz. So we didn't have to send anybody to we didn't have to worry about covering for time off for academy
The
or
things
whatever.
that we're talking about tonight, the things that we're talking about tonight, and the big points that you've mentioned before that we just discussed, they all favor a sharing thing article risk. And communities are looking to do this. It was written up in Cityscape. I see that. The other things, the insurance and payment for vehicles and extra use and how do we handle that, those I think are the kind of the minutia, the deal to be figured out. And it'll be figured out over time. But we have people come to our meetings from Pocahontas, from the school system, and from others. Pocahontas Economic Development. How can we get Pocahontas and Lorenz to have better sharing of our assets and what we have in our communities? Our kids are in school. It doesn't do Pocahontas any good for Lorenz to be hollowed out or a place where there's lawlessness, drugs, crime. If you don't think that will spill over, it will. If it's around you, it'll be in your community. So to me, the school has it right. How can we share? Because we're bigger. We're a bigger entity when we share things. And it gives those officers, I think, a better opportunity to come here and serve.
And stay.
You know, it's the same thing with our electric, our copay. We went through 10 linemen in 10 years, just basically because they were on call either every weekend or every other weekend, and now we're
this helps with that. And again, I don't think you'll ever see a situation where Alex is going to say, well, we're going to leave Pocahontas there because Pocahontas or Lorenz needs some people.
That was one thing I was going to ask you. I mean, obviously I've always said that one of the things we've always been very aware of and try to tell people about when they're coming is within the county. It was always, I've got your back, I've got your six. Like, you didn't even have to dispatch before an officer was on the way. That has been the underlying common denominator since I've been here. But one of the things that keeps getting asked is, you know, you're leaving Pocahontas uncovered for Lorenz, which we've already established is not completely accurate. But what about if you go back up the county, or you go back up, I mean, it's not just a Lorenz thing, correct?
That is correct. You know, and the caveat into that, I mean, so Nick, actually, him and I talked because he goes, hey, I think it'd be a really good idea. We have Heritage Days coming in Pocahontas. Do you think Lorenz is going to care if I'm, you know, when I'm spending, he spent 8 hours of his Lorenz shift, and he altered his shift to help cover us because the county was busy. Everybody was incredibly busy, you know, especially during the day. Henderson was just horribly busy that day. We were able to then, I had an extra officer here that is part of the team, not to saying the sheriff's office isn't part of our team. I don't ever want to lose. But when you have one chief that has the ability to then do that, I could do that. And so Nick spent 8 hours of the 12-hour shift in Pocahontas assisting Josh and just, you know, being there to answer those additional calls. And why is it? Is Lorenz uncovered? No, he can get back to Lorenz. I mean, the distance isn't what we think it is as far as, you know, that side of it. And then like Hillary's saying, is that we've had a call where, and actually the Lorenz officer, just because of the way it was, the county deputy was in Lorenz, unfortunately serving at civil, and we have a guy shooting with his girlfriend in the car north of Gilmore City. And we go. We hear the call, we go. Dispatch says go, we go. That doesn't, you know, I mean, again, it doesn't matter. This agreement only provides for that team approach because now, I mean, and again, nothing against the sheriff's office, but the problem is that if you try to take one agency and then you try to spend it over 576 square miles, there's a Des Moines Register article on this. The problem becomes is how do you facilitate and how do you get to that? Because you're not always going to have one. Buena Vista County has been a great example of this, where it, you know, again, they're now up to like 18 or 19 deputies, you know.
Well, when we talked to the sheriff's office, the first two things they said were, we don't want to do this. and you can't afford it to do it long term. And I don't think that's their bailiwick. That's not what they see themselves to cover these little communities. And they don't have the local policing ability, really. They have a guy there, but it's not like he lives there, and you know what I mean? It's different. And they acknowledge that. They said that. We'll be there to patrol, but it's different than
A dog call.
the local police.
I can always call at 11 o'clock. I guess
Right.
something to hold to, one of the things, and maybe it's just, I think you're a Pocahontas native?
I grew up here, I left and went a few different places and came back, yeah.
Okay, so I'm a Lorenz native. I moved 4 blocks the other way. I didn't go very far. I left for college for a little bit, but came right back. When I was a lifeguard at 16, 15, one of the first things we were told is, you might not always have an ambulance in town. You might not have the coverage. You're gonna have to wait 15, 14 minutes. So I don't know if in my mind the not having coverage there 24/7, or I mean, they'll answer the calls. You just might not have that immediate response that maybe you're kind of used to with everything. Pocahontas is very lucky. You have everything in town. We have not always had that ability. At one point we did. So we've kind of adapted. It seems like a strong, aggressive word, but we've learned how to navigate that time waiting. I mean, as a 16, 15-year-old, you're being told you might not have a responsible adult EMT here to help you save a child's life. So, but we knew it was coming. We just had to learn how to navigate that and work with it. So I don't think anything's ever uncovered. It's just not necessarily fully.
It's quick, and again, it's all based on the priority, and that's part of the reason why the guys will cover me if they don't know what the priority is. So again, we had the big incident over by Gilmore City, not the one I'm talking about, just this last one. Again, we're both over there. Who's in Pocahontas? When we did have the Mr. Nielsen issue, Nick was the one sitting in Pocahontas for Lorenz, sitting here, but he's trying to provide because the county is horribly busy in a very serious situation. And we are more than willing when we're going to go help. I mean, and that's what we're going to do. But there's always this assumption, like Hillary's saying, that we're going to be there. We can't say it. When your first ambulance is out, your first ambulance it's 8 to 10 minutes is what the average, and because that's what the rural response time is. That's reality. If you're in Omaha, they have call delays. If you're a priority 4 call, it can take 6 hours for someone to answer that call. So the key is that we're talking, if it's a serious call, I'm going to get somebody there. I mean, we had one where I happened to be in Lorenz, and I called Josh right away because it was a report of someone trying to harm themselves, which I was concerned about because I didn't think she was at that house to begin with, and she wasn't. But I called Josh right away, and I got Josh heading there, right? And again, we have our partners, just like we partner with the sheriff's office. And there are times where there was a car on fire, a truck on fire down south, and it wasn't an incident in jail, but there was something. They're busy.
Then we have a DNR officer.
And then we have a DNR. I had a DNR officer because we were busy in Pocahontas, and I got a DNR.
Very serious situation
Right.
here, right?
I mean, I have all these folks' phone numbers. I mean, and I do that intentionally, not because I just sit on the phone and want to talk to it. I like our game warden, our state game warden, but I also have our conservation guys. We have officers that people don't even realize. I mean, that we have conservation officers that have certifications.
So again, to both of your statements here, and speaking broadly as far as concern, like you said, Hillary, the expectation for Pocahontas has been that, right now, as it stands, we're a full force police department. And without this agreement, we don't have to worry about that call response time unless there's a mutual aid situation in which everyone in all surrounding counties would go to. And so the expectation for our town has been that we didn't have to accept a delay in response time. And by sharing services, we now have to accept that despite being fully staffed. And so I hear that concern. I also understand that the state of rural Iowa, it's going to be commonplace to not only share services like this, but also just resources in general. And some of that may eventually get out of our hands with how the state decides to proceed with certain things like this. But while I understand that that may be the future, that's not the reality for Pocahontas citizens right now. So that's where that concern comes from. I think it's valid. I don't
No,
think
I'm
you can-
not disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
I'm not
Can-
invalidating
And can I make one comment to that? So when I'm covering a 60-hour run, how much do you think in that 60 hours I'm actually on the street?
You're saying over like the course of your week, if you're working.
If I have to cover a 68 or a 40 hour, or the guys are covering the 24, we have a formula that we use on when they're out, but they're not in the car, they're not out, because they have to be in a non-call status, because otherwise you can't work 48 hours and be normal. So there's a reality already in that that's built into that, right? I mean, when I had to go to Lake City and if the sheriff's office wasn't available and I had to do a sexual assault investigation, which this is a true story, and I had to go to Lake City because that's where the other half of this was. Who was providing coverage to here? County got calls. They weren't available. And that's my point, is that we may not think that there's delays. The delays are there. It's every day. It's not like I have an expectation, but we can't say that if I'm if I'm here at City Hall and I'm meeting and this has happened, sitting here and somebody has a keys locked in car and then we've got a dog running and then we've got, if I'm in the middle of a domestic violence case, they're going to wait, and they have. And that routinely happens. So I just want to be careful when we sit there and say, but we have an expectation of having that be, there is no expectation of that. That's never been.
I think the statement would assume that in an emergent setting, people know it's similar to if my house was on fire, I would expect the fire department to get there quick, right?
So that was gonna be a question. So I know for ours, we leave one fire truck in town. Do you guys leave one, or do they all leave? If you're out of town, if they're providing service to a township, or they're coming to a different town, do you leave any fire truck in town?
They also have a crew that stays back.
Okay,
So if you're on cook committee for that quarter, you also stay back.
Our city truck never leaves. But in your ambulance, if you have all three out, all three can leave.
And have.
So then
Can I ask again?
Mhm.
Has there been any time in this agreement where Pocahontas has been without coverage?
No.
Can we clarify
has
that
there
though,
been-
because we just
What do you mean by
mentioned
coverage?
that-
Do I have an officer available for call? Yes.
Yes. So can you speak to that a little bit so that everyone understands that
Well, I got
what
one
that
question.
looks like?
Yeah, good.
Has there been any situations where an officer from Lorenz has given you the ability to provide coverage that you might not have had anywhere?
Several.
So, there's never been a situation where you haven't been covered, and there has been situations where our officer was the one doing the coverage while you were doing it.
Correct.
So, that is kind of a, I don't know, I see it as a non-issue.
I think the main point though is what you're saying is you're asking the citizens of Pocahontas to do at least 21 hours more each week that they would have otherwise the year.
But
I think
that's
is what you're getting at.
well, right. But I think that there again, I mean, I think that again, it's about capacity, though, right? Like, I mean, we have the capacity because during that 21 hours, it's typically when the officers aren't engaged in anything fruitful, or whatever.
And has there been any time where you guys have needed help that we refused to help? As far as the county goes, because you keep bringing the county up, so.
No, and I don't mean to do, I'm just saying, no, I mean, the county has been there, but there have been a couple where, like, when we sent the DNR officer out.
Right, I
The county,
understand, there's
the county,
always going to be times.
yeah, the county wasn't available during that time, so I had to get a game warden because the county didn't have somebody available to go cover another call. And Lorenz, but if it had been in Pocahontas, we would have been in the same boat, right?
So, again, not knowing your role, Alex is a chief, is there, in that 21 hours, right, 21 hours? I'm assuming you feel that you need 21 hours because that's right on paper and that's what you really.
And it works, and if we go over it, then like I said, the officers are built to their own.
So do you feel like silly questions I think, but do you feel like you need that many hours to be an effective chief and supportive chief in both areas up there? Or do you think that could be reduced at all?
Well, 21 is notional because, so if we hit 21, we still continue service. the service still continues.
Right,
So-
I'm thinking if it was a chief
Right.
specifically, because
So-
that's how it's written.
Right.
Okay.
Well, but that also then includes the other guys if they're having to cover that time, you know, because again, remember, 100% of my duty is patrol duty. I'm only a chief. My chief goes into it, but I am a patrol officer first. So when you look at it that way, when we talk about, so I'm only providing, I mean, even at the city of Pocahontas, I mean, you guys never realize, I mean, the amount of phone calls that I take off time and everything. Most of my work, I can't say that I just get to sit in an office, right? So when somebody calls me, or if I'm working, I'm doing chief duties, but I'm also a patrol officer. So it crosses up, until we get to 5, that has to be, that by math and law and how FLSA views us.
So when you're doing your police chief duties, just to help me understand, in Lorenz, those up to 21 hours or whatever it is, are you on the street like you are here? Are you?
Some of it is remote, so like Nick called me on a couple calls today, so those get put into the spreadsheet, and so there's a remote component.
Okay, so that's also skewed, right? So sometimes we think you're out of this town up to 21 hours, but that's maybe not the reality of it.
Right, and it's not the reality of it in the sense also because like on the way we kind of work it informally is, so like the day guys know that they kind of start in an on-call phase. There's nothing official, we don't call it on-call. So I know that the day before, so if I'm working Wednesday, Thursday, I know Tuesday night I'm in town, right? And Josh knows who to call, right? Because I have to be here. So there's always someone usually along those lines. I know where my reserve officers are at when we need to call them out. But just as far as the full-time goes, that's always the case. I mean, we had the one incident with Dalton in the basement of the house, you know, which was in that same thing, and he was in it was a bad situation, but he knew who the locals, you know, because the county was busy at that point. They were in Fonda, so we had to get someone there quicker to him. So we knew who the local close guy was, and so Mason actually was the guy who called out. We know that it's not a requirement, but it's an understanding, you know, as part of our being a team.
Right, because I have this TV vision of a police chief that it's up to 21 hours and Alex is up there and he's sitting in the Lorenz City Hall or wherever it's at and putting in his up to 21 hours. That's my TV.
But I think it's important to note that the 21 hours isn't just police chief service.
That's what I needed to find out.
Yeah. So it's 21 hours as a whole, right? Alex, that anyone can do administrative versus patrolling versus answering calls, or whatever that logs up.
It's basically responding to the calls on Lorenz.
Okay.
That, you know, and then again, we just take out of that 21 up to the 21, and then after 21, the city is billed at the hourly rate of the officer that's showing up.
Okay.
So,
and I was reading it more focused on the police
Administrative.
Yeah. Or that's what my mind.
but like Ryan had said, that I mean, it is built. This agreement is built to have those officers, you know, provide those types of additional services.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Do you know what percentage of that time approximately is administrative versus patrol?
That's a tough answer, Wes, because my problem is that, you know, it's just like you know how it goes. I mean, Wednesday, Thursday, so my Wednesday, Thursday shift, I'm getting phone calls, I'm doing all this, and, you know, again, on my time off. So if we're talking about actually when I'm physically in the car, I mean, between Jack calling me or, you know, I mean, I would say, you know, it's pretty easy for me to get to 10, for sure.
What about like on a monthly basis even? Maybe if like the week varies too much.
It all depends on what's going on. So like July, I mean, I'm coming into Lorenza's big season, and then I've got the big season for the, you know, for the fair, which is on our backs, and which is fine. So it's tough to say. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times, so like when I log in my time, so if I'm working Wednesday and I'm sitting down and all of a sudden I'm getting that, and Hillary's got a whole bunch of questions for me because we have an individual that's being difficult or whatnot up there. Now that time is logged. But the problem is that I'm also logging that as patrol time. I'm not necessarily logging it as admin time because I'm already here. So I go up and meet with her at City Hall. It's a tough. So a lot of my Lorenz time, when you see Lou logged and you see those hours, it doesn't. I'm not going to put in every time admin because it's not. You know, because I'm patrolling, like I said, I consider my job patrol first, admin second. So.
No, your timekeeping on there is great. I mean, I wouldn't do any better than that. Also, is it about 31 hours a week you're averaging up there? I mean, that's.
Yeah, that seems to be that usually. Yeah. So we're doing about 10 hours over every week, just by the nature of it. And you know, it is tough, and I mean, and you know us from that, is trying to balance out your small towns, because I remember the number of times on a weekend, him and I are working, and all of a sudden I'm like, he's in Rolfe. It's like, you know, again, sometimes we get busy in other areas, and it's like, so we always want to make sure we have an overage. But now as Lorenz is coming of age, it backs those hours out too, right? So as they're providing service back to us, I just subtract those hours. I mean, we'll see that in fourth quarter. I just, again, with everything else, I just would do that. So then we'll see those numbers, and it'll actually even balance even better. Our big problem with our spreadsheets is, again, Lorenz didn't have an officer for 2 quarters. Well, 3 quarters technically, but didn't have. So obviously we had some ones, and I think it'll bring that 31 hours further down.
Sure. So let me ask you guys, as a city of Lorenz, and like you said, I mean, slightly smaller, but really fairly similar on certain aspects of it. What is your guys' long-term goal for your police department? Do you still have one full-time spot open that you're looking to get staffed? Are you looking to just rely on this on an annual basis to renew every year? What is your overarching goal?
Well, you're asking me. I guess this was my idea to begin with. I think it's a positive thing for both communities to have a larger force at hand, and I feel that other people around the state are looking to do that because all of us are in the same shape trying to keep these officers. I would love to see a long-term relationship like this work, and I think every year you'll hammer out some of the little things that are maybe problematic or whatever. I think it's our intent to have a police force. When we had a situation where we had none and we were talking to the county, our citizens very strongly said, you want to have a police force, and that's what we want. We want to be a lawful community. We want to have order. We've got a lot of stuff going on there with manufacturing in our town, and those people don't want to have investments and businesses that are operating where there's crime, theft, drugs, that sort of thing. I think, if you're to ask me, I would love to see this work long term. I think, as I said, when Alex goes, you'll have a far better shot at bringing in a quality or bringing and having them retained, and also hiring new officers. But it's not our intent for us to have less and rely upon you to fill in the holes. The only thing I would look at this is, let's share the guy in the middle who can allocate these resources where they're needed. If we need a little here, we need a little there, somebody's gone, we've got something going on, share that expense. That's the big expense, really, in terms of all your manpower, is the guy in the middle, or the woman in the middle. And I see that working long term very nicely for communities. And I see, situations where there's, 3 communities that are doing that. And as I said, most of the sheriff's offices don't want that. They don't want to patrol all these little towns. But what do? They're required by law to have something. So.
One other point that I'd like to make, sort of, Ross, are you done? I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's not our intent to have less and expect you to fill the hole.
I feel it needs to continue too, just for our officer retention.
Right. Yeah.
I think
we might start losing officers if we can't offer them benefits. So.
I guess, Nicole, I'm going to go back to that. When I said expectation, that was kind of a strong word. I honestly think this is the way of the world in rural Iowa, is the sharing agreements. If you look at schools, I don't know how much Pocahontas does, but I know the city or Lawrence Marathon shares with South Central Calhoun. They share with, obviously we share with you guys to some extent, but staffing as well. We share our superintendent with Sioux Rapids. We share a business manager with South Central Calhoun. And the state provides incentives for those sharing agreements. I think it's only a matter of time before the state realizes it's not just a school thing. It is going to be a rural, small town thing. I agree with Rod. I don't think this was intent to be a short term. It's not a placement. It's a policy. It's not a placeholder. It's a policy, right? I think it's the benefit for not just the citizens, but for the officers as well. You're taking much strain off of them. I don't think it just benefits one or the other. I think it's
not our intent to spend less, really, either. I mean, if you look at, I think in 2025, your budget divided by your police budget divided by your population, and if you take the lenses, we're spending about $70 more per person for policing. I mean, our budget is small. There's fewer people, but we're spending more per person than Pocahontas is presently. So again, it's not our intent to have you fill the holes for us. It was my intent when I first talked to Alex and Becky, was to make something that was big enough that it was viable, something that would last, and you could attain and retain talent that you need in a small town that is very difficult to do. That's why I approached Alex. I thought, let's do it together and make something that's a big enough entity that we've got some resources.
Those big cities to go to the academy, they see the graduation.
What's up, Lauren?
And they try and poach all the small town officers.
As soon as they graduate.
If I may add to this, I don't want to interrupt, but it's kind of hard to get it worded anyway. As a 10-year paramedic, to build on what Hillary was talking about the future, I think EMS is already showing what is happening, and it's a matter of time before the police department follow. Lack of people willing to do the job, putting a bigger strain on the crew that we have now. Burnout is real, and it'll hit you before you realize it. And the biggest advantage, in my opinion, to this agreement is that by pulling the officers together, it helps prevent burnout because it allows for a better work-life balance. You get to have your time off. Alex, as you said in your response to the questions in the email, you have more time off now working with the 2 towns than before when you were just honest. And I don't want to see our officers burn out again. And the history in both departments is burnout and turnover. And this program has proven that it's better for our officers and better for us.
It also goes to
Thank you, Lauren.
thank you, Lauren, the county as a whole too, right? I mean, when PCEDC did that survey of the residents in all the county, it was quality of life. If we're burning out our officers, or if you want to attract people not only to your town, but to the county as a whole, which is a large part of it, you have to be able to provide that quality of life.
And that quality of life comment, one piece that we have of the retention stuff, even to add to the retention. I have a firearms instructor. I'm going to be sending one to go off to train. I have Loren's resources and assets now that I can start sending to schools. When there's only 4 of us, when somebody goes away, it's a hardship, right? I mean, that was always one thing Mason talked about, even trying to schedule, because every so many years he has to requalify and recertify. He's worried about when are we going to be short and everything else. And that's just, and that doesn't even when we have our personals, but this is just, and we're now bringing in those quality, and much thanks to the sheriff's office, they also provide us with those, but to provide those with the extra, so that we have an extra driving instructor or something. We always have something to fall back on. And that's what this agreement is for. I mean, just even in the training set, because we all know in all of our jobs, if we could go on and learn a little more or do it bonds us to where we're at.
And Nicole, as far as, I guess I want you to understand our feeling is, if there's costs that are incurred, we want to make that right. If there's liability, we want to make sure that it's where it should be. So we don't want to leave you hanging with a cost on mileage or a vehicle or anything like that. Those things, we understand that's a cost. If it's on us, we intend to handle that. And if there's liability concerns, let's make sure our insurers and our lawyers have that hammered out to where everybody's comfortable with, if the liability's on you, it's on you and not on your neighbor. You know what I mean? We're open to that.
So that's it, being a neighbor, being offering you the car without it in the contract. Just, hey, what can we do to help? And that's what neighbors do, right?
But we're not opposed to taking care of those things that would be a cost.
So touching on, I think it's best for all of us to be able to justify everything we do and say and how we vote in the end of all this. And so touching on a few things that got brought up a little bit, I spent an ungodly amount of time last night until 3 a.m. reviewing all 585 2080 law enforcement agreements on the city or on the state of Iowa's website. Out of that 585, there are 14 to 15 that are between two cities, going all the way back to March 20th of 2020. And so, 5 of those were the same two cities over 5 fiscal years. So, yes, while I think what we've mentioned previous times before is that the way of rural Iowa is probably sharing services to some extent, there were cities to counties for a large majority of those 585, and there was a handful of county or city to school districts. So, over 500 of them were in that realm of things, whereas the city to city is relatively new. Of those 15 city to cities, they were either adjacent cities or they were an agreement that provided extra coverage for like a speedway race that was an annual event. There were 3 or 4 that I found to be pretty pertinent to what we are trying to do here. I also want to kind of tangent off of that for a minute and then kind of come back to that idea. But the mention to cost per resident, so I went ahead and figured out that information based off of the fiscal year 26, since that was more relevant to what we actually saw under our agreement. Granted, again, the caveat was you didn't have your 2 law enforcement officers, so salaries, benefits, that stuff was obviously not well reflected in that. But residents paid $159 per person versus Pocahontas residents paid $200, somewhere between $220 to $230 per person.
And we were at full staff, but we were hired.
And
so you're right. That doesn't reflect because we didn't have people on tape.
Right. And so I think that goes back to the original question, which I'm not sure was necessarily answered, but do you guys usually would you have 3 full-time officers if you were fully staffed without a police chief? Or is 2 your maximum?
Well, I think we have a minimum of 2, and then we had to use reserve officers to kind of fill in around.
Okay. We normally were budgeted for a 3-man staff.
Classified as a 3-officer town.
And we are to seat them.
And you have to have a chief of police. The city is not allowed to operate without the chief.
So I guess my question more so of like, what is the growth of Lorenz, or what is your long-term situation? Is that using that 3rd role to maybe be accounted for the police chief services in some extent, and maybe more of a part-time 3rd role that you would be pursuing to fill that third
I can do a little bit on that, Rod, because there's been some of the stuff, and again, some of Hillary talked about. So like I said, one of the ideas was a school resource officer, and that's been talked, especially since it's the only 2 school districts in the county, right? So we could do that and then have an officer that's assigned and part of that. So absolutely. So school resource officer, actually, when Jada Hallberg was here, that was one of the things that she wanted me to work toward. Obviously, the school went through some turbulence and stuff, so we couldn't get that. I don't know where they sit budget, but that has been one of the things that we have talked about. The other one that we have talked about, and more so, is because we're relatively busy in all categories, but especially working on that, is working toward an officer that might just be, and this is taken from the Eagle Grove model with Goldfield, in the sense of where we just actually move, whether it's a reserve officer or whatever, adding that property maintenance that would work for both cities, because we are the two largest towns in Pocahontas, and being able to have that shared resource, however that would look, and maybe it is a certified. Again, I don't want to get ahead of that, but that's one thing that we talked about, and how it would benefit both communities. But there again, that might also be a shared resource where that position in itself is also just split 50-50, because it would make it so much easier if we just had someone dedicated. I don't know what the right answers are, and I put that in my response in the capital side of things. So those two could be,
I think, generally speaking, our desire would be to have 3 unsung reserves that we could call upon. So that's where we're headed.
That's
I mean,
our budget.
we're happy to be at 2. and we would like to be at 3.
Okay.
And again, that will even further reduce any chance that we would be taking you or putting you in a situation where you had your officers had to be there and leaving you with less than you had hoped to have.
And on that's what's attracting the reserves to this, is because, I mean, honestly, between the calls Pocahontas gets and the calls Lorenz gets, which have been pretty enabled sometimes on both towns. I mean, it's not one worse than the other. It's not. I mean, I really despise that some folks think that one town is worse, and that's not the case. If you actually pull those numbers, it's not. And so when we look at that, and we're looking at pulling that kind of thought process, and then the crime rate questions and things like that. I mean, we're just not. I mean, they're just not there.
So let me circle back to kind of where I left off there, is that I had a lot of different conversations with a lot of different stakeholders in this agreement. And what I ended up compiling was that, there's a need for a shared police chief, right? We know that to be factual. There is a need for our officers and Lorenz officers, vice versa, to cover shifts in the opposite cities to some extent, especially when given emergency situations, PTO, what have you. My understanding is right now there's a lot of overnight shifts that stand open where there's just one officer to serve both cities. Is that, and it's not every night, I know that, but is that what the scheduling works out to be?
Okay, so to go along those lines, and I took an analysis of the last 30 days in the log. So just through the computer, and it's tough for me because the SHIELD system is, as Wes can certify for me, is unwieldy sometimes, and some of the data that you try to extract from it. So it shows that during the time, and again, this could also be a Mason response to it too, because we just actually had that conversation before everybody came here in discussing that through. Initially, when we looked at this agreement, we started thinking about like a 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. Our problem was consistently our stakeholders, especially the schools, were absolutely concerned. So that was our first problem. Our second problem was is looking at it as what is really the balance. And so, I know Josh is around the corner. I mean, the reality of it at night is that starting and just taking the last 30 days, which is a decent number, the last 30 days, we had, after 11 p.m. till 6 a.m., there was usually one police call in the entire county.
And I'll say when Mitch leaves his pager on overnight accidentally, I mean,
right.
Sometimes in the morning I'm like, well, it must not have went off. I didn't get woken up. So I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I just was understanding from the scheduling side of things. Is that usually how it goes?
So that's why we've done it that way. So first, statistically, again, I was a stats nerd and tutored it in both undergrad and grad. So I spend a lot of time looking at those numbers, and I've looked at those numbers long even before we had this, because I was always trying to balance when the officers were out, when we could do that, when we could bend and shake, because again, especially when I had fewer resources. The reality of it was that, so I know that from 11 to 6, I might have one call in the entire county. And typically those calls require all officers to go to those calls. You know, those are the ones that really bite. But they were okay with that. I mean, because we're sending those folks out. So then we look at, so then let's break it down from the 11 to 6 category. Well, we usually always have somebody around to backfill in that 11 to 6. We're not really hurting anybody as far as getting the call out. Now remember, we already have call out during our 11 to whatever. I have people available. I know from roughly 6 to 11, I have people. Now we may incur a few more calls, usually not emergent in nature. The only calls are the priority of calls between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. and SHIELD doesn't allow me to break it down. It says that 60% of all calls come into that. But what it doesn't take into account for, and you guys saw it, securities, 120 securities in Lorenz. When do those mostly occur? That's because somebody's doing them at night. When are they doing them in Pocahontas? I mean, we drive the dispatchers nuts. Now they just have town check, and all the securities are listed inside of that, besides school tracking. So again, the reality of it is we did the analysis and we talked about it and whether it makes a month. I mean, that's what we came up with. And him and I both know what it's like to work a day shift. I mean, Pocahontas is a busy place. Mostly not severe, but then plus with the school, it works out great. Because again, the sheriff's office has taken on some extra burdens too. They could be limited and whatnot. Not that they have ever failed to not want to respond. That's not what I'm saying. But again, it provides us with that extra piece that we have.
So here's my proposal, taking in all of that information as to how the agreement is structured. I thought the best kind of compromise in everyone's concerns that they brought to and what they liked about the agreement was that overall the general contract language for effective date and administration and duration and termination and all that stuff stayed the same. But where it changed was kind of the middle of the agreement, in that the chief is on a retainer. And so instead of just saying, no, this is multiple parts here, so listen through. So right now it says that, that 50% of your salary and benefits is what is the payment for the 21 hours. And again, that could be provided by anyone, right? It's not just chief services or administrative services. If we scaled that back and we said, and we had kind of already went over this, that it's hard to pin down, but if we said over the course of a month or over the course of a quarter, we as Lorenz expect 30 hours in a month of administrative services. And we're willing to pay 20% of Alex's salary and benefits to cover that administrative portion. Okay? The second section would then be, we still share patrol though, where if Lorenz is needed over here, or if Pokey is needed over in Lorenz, we would bill at that hourly rate plus mileage. There'd be no more, we can do that up to 21 hours, but then after 21 hours, it's hour and mileage. With the hope that the day shifts are covered respectively in each town right now, and we want to continue that, essentially like what you said, for school coverage purposes, and foster that, but also knowing that the availability, should you need to call another officer for assistance, is still there. Where I think, again, what we alluded to with the insurance, if you're calling for mutual aid where multiple agencies are responded, that hourly and maintenance would not be billed, because it would be assumed that even if this agreement did not exist, we would still be going or they would still be coming, whichever way that may be.
So, and again, my problem with all of that is that it's going to become very unwieldy to try to track all of that stuff. Because, I mean, we have officers dispatched to us and we didn't even request them. So there becomes your problem, is the fact that I don't know how we'd even break that down, because I would have to be at work every day listening and reviewing every single call that came in to determine that.
But this is the same schedule that happens after 21 hours already. after 21 hours, the officer is dealing with, if they put in an hour after 21 hours for a call, which is what the agreement says, is anything after 21 hours isn't just general patrol anymore. It should be for services needed. It's hourly plus the mileage rate.
Which it already is.
Right. So if I'm taking that and applying it to every call.
So you're saying you want mileage, because that's where I'm just trying. I'm trying to visualize it, Nicole. So I apologize.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
it's
trying to be
easier to
difficult.
read it out. What I'm saying is that what is happening and how it's being billed after 21 hours currently would go for all the hours that anyone responds to a call over in Lorenz, and again, vice versa. If you're coming over here, and that is what I'm understanding is happening anyway, if they're coming over here to fill a shift, they're billing us.
But actually, what you're doing is you're actually reducing the reimbursement to Pocahontas. So if you reduce it from 50, at 50 you're paying at the max, right? So that 40,000, I mean, you're paying the max benefit. We know that in this last one was only $22,000, and that's when they didn't even have. So I think you're actually going to short the city of Pocahontas by my analysis, and trying to understand that. I think we're better off in doing 20, we got $62,000, I mean.
So financially, I would agree, but
and so it's
if you're looking at the chief's salary aspect of it, absolutely, it's less. But you're also getting billed the officer's hourly rate, which we're already paying, but Lorenz, we'll just use, and I don't mean to say Lorenz is paying this, whatever. I'm just saying, as a Pocahontas council member, if one of our city officers is going over there, no matter if it's within the first 21 hours or not, we're paying that person's salary, but they're not within Pocahontas. So Lorenz is paying that person's salary for the coverage they are providing in Lorenz, and it also shores up the maintenance side of things because the mileage is.
So but let me point this, and I guess asking our co-pay residents. So when our two journeymen and trainee are gone to Grettinger, how much is Grettinger paying us for their being up there?
Wage.
Yeah, so do they pay the wage when they're in Grettinger?
Yes.
But then do they pay half of Clint's? Does anybody pay half of Clint's? Because we got to do it the same. If we're going to do it, we got to do it the same. Yeah, what does Pocahontas put into that? I don't believe they put in anything for an administrative side.
Pay so much.
I think they do that. They
Craig
cover
is
some of Craig's administrative work.
Well, it's just the general salary.
Yeah,
Right.
it's general.
And kind of probably the same thing, it's hard to break it up, right?
Right,
Between administrative and work.
Right, and so because he also provides services too.
Yeah.
So again, I think you just provide a base. So it's like a base with an hourly. I mean, and so there. I mean, so I guess that for me is because basically that type of a change would then require me to earn my 21 hours would require me 21 hours of service of.
No, I'm not.
Can I ask this, going forward, there'll be very, very little use of your officers other than you. So to maximize your,
Now that we have two full-time officers.
and moving to 3, to maximize your, let's say, revenue from the rents, I would think that to me, I want to have his salary and expenses and stuff. I would want that because I just don't think that there's going to be very much back and forth with the officers.
So I think that takes the gray area out of it, right? Because the reality is either one of us could blue books officers tomorrow and we're in this more defined situation where what I'm proposing is each city is going to be responsible for the direct coverage, the direct vehicle maintenance that actually is being applied. I also think that we get ourselves into that 31 hours per week average because you don't know how your week is going to play out, right? So if our day officers think that they have some time on Monday and Tuesday and they want to go front load the week with some hours to get up to that 21, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday comes around and something crazy happens and we're spending a lot of time up there, you can't plan for that. It's too unpredictable. So if we get rid of the designated maximum amount of hours that this requires each week and pay for the hours that are actually being provided for services, it's going to, one, ensure that we are cost neutral because each town is respectively paying for the vehicle maintenance and the officer coverage that they are obtaining. And it's a lot easier to plan for in the variable nature of law enforcement where you have no idea if you're going to be there on Saturday night and not have gotten to your 21 hours yet.
So, okay, so I'm trying to get the clarity. So basically what we do is we take the 21 hours out. So if I work and I put in 6 hours at my salary rate, admin, patrol, whatever, then that's what they pay. So the only concern with this is that takes a lot of configuring, right? When I know that I only have to go to 21 hours, it makes it nice when I only know 1 week I might only have to calculate 5 hours of that. I now have to go through each week and calculate,
Wasn't part of the benefit of this was that with us paying half, that Pocahontas had funds to pay more to your officers, giving them.
So we passed a resolution at our last meeting. Our officers' salaries will not be affected by anything we do with the completing agreement.
And which the problem has become is that, and this is where we going to have a slight problem, is that when I go to figure out those hourly rates, right? Because the agreement was 10,000 plus. So that's, again, I understand that's what you guys were given, but there was clearly from last year a form to go off of that you guys should have had, because that should be the calculation. So, even again, to determine the half, it's, what did she come up with? 91,228 is my salary. So you subtract it from 10. That's the hourly rate we use, not the $10,000 that Lorenz provides us. That's how that was all worked out.
So can I ask one question to you and the officers?
Sure.
Because I know nothing about law enforcement. Not my area of expertise. I'm with you. I chose the administrative side of work. I completely entrust you to do your job how you see fit and direct officers to how you see them to be fit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Does this work for you and your officers? Do you guys find this to be a benefit? Is it better for you? If you went back to the old way, would it be negative? How does it affect you guys? Because ultimately you, besides the citizens, which obviously is a huge main concern, you guys are the ones that are seeing the force of it, the brunt of it, all that. Does it work for you guys? Because my expertise is not going to be able to answer that. I'm not going to be able to dictate the 28E and nitpick it apart and see, yep, I think that's how it's going to work best for you guys. You guys are the ones that are going to tell me, hey, this works, hey, this doesn't.
And let me make sure to understand is that part of the reason why too that we chose 21 hours to be up there was, again, to ensure that we were also providing Lorenz some time. I mean, again, whether that be some patrol or whatever, because I know by our call base, we have 21 hours a week available, that they have to do that. There's no doubt statistically that could occur.
And when we had the sheriff's department covering for us, we got the call logs, and I have it right here. It was about 1 a day.
Right.
Or less than 1 a day. We were averaging 5 to 6 a week.
And so what this does is it benchmarks it for the ability. It takes some weight off of, and honestly off of me, in the sense, because now I can say I've got 21 hours. My concern is, so if I have a problem house in Lorenz and I need a little more assistance, and so I'm redirecting some resources to go there, or going to be vice versa. 21 gave us the operational time. Above and beyond that, it gives me a boundary. To me, to not do that can be conflicted. Not to say that it can't be done. I don't think he understands from especially my side as far as doing the accounting side of it and doing the operational planning. Normally you try to say, and this is whether I've been in the Army or whatever, I know what I'm going to dedicate for resources over what time. This sets that for me. If you give that to me and you don't, then we come back next year saying, oh, you're spending too much or you're spending too less. This gives me a guidepost because that's my concern is that I'm not going to have that guidepost and people are going to have their own. This gives us an actual number. Now I'll refer off to these guys, but that's the technical part of that too, why to me, 21 hours is so important. I mean, because we'll definitely lose money. I mean, as far as if we want to consider it a reimbursement revenue, whatever, we're going to lose money with that change. But go ahead.
I'm just my perspective as a city administrator is to make sure that my employees, my officers are happy and able to perform their job and to provide the citizens and make sure that my citizens are happy and protected and all that. Does this agreement prohibit any of that for you guys?
I would just say that I've been pleasantly surprised on how it worked. I'm happy with it.
I mean, I really enjoy it. One of the reasons why I left Pocahontas and went to Spencer, A, was the pay, and B, I got tired of working 36-hour shifts because we were constantly understaffed. I did that for 3.5 years. Now, I have Mason to bounce off, if he's gone or I need to be gone or whatever, we have that. I mean, I think it's a benefit.
Josh?
Josh.
Oh, he took off.
Well, to that nature, Hillary, that's why I believe at least a handful of us have had those conversations privately, and that's where
I have to. I just wanted it on public.
Yeah, I think that's where my recommendations are stemming from, is from all of those discussions. It actually, to not have a maximum or a minimum you have to meet every week requires less planning. If you don't have to be up there 21 hours, you don't have to worry about how much you're up there and if you're going to meet it, and whether you're cramming people in or you're overshooting earlier in the week, and then you end up, because per our numbers, each week that we've been in this agreement, we've overshot at least 10 hours.
Not every week.
Can I ask a dumb question? Are we actually spending 31 hours on one call a week?
No.
Okay, just making sure.
No, so I mean, that's spread out over. So again, and that's okay because we don't know what those needs are. Again, I just feel that assumption comes to the fact, and that's why I'm saying we set a minimum hour, because again, it's a guidepost. Because I don't want to have to deal with the political ramifications from it.
Will the overshooting level out?
Yes, absolutely. But again, we've only had 1/4 of that really by getting the officers. So like at Jack, Jack doesn't come in until mid-February. Nick was at the beginning of January.
Now that we're at 2 and going for 3, you're overshooting the 21 should subside.
Right.
I think that's just God. I mean, we're not going to come after you and say you owe us money back because we didn't get 21 hours.
Which is why I'm suggesting we remove it, because as the policy stands, if something should go wrong, you can. And I can't accept that liability that you have a leg to stand on if we don't, yes, it's nice to hear you wouldn't hold it accountable, but you could.
But you could also hold me accountable for the fact and say that I'm spending too much time up there because there's no requirement to do that. And that could happen too, because given everything, and again, I'm not trying to go down bad paths, but given what has already even been said in the newspaper, where there was information given that I was never given, my point being is that I don't know what I'm going to face. So that's the problem with this. 21 gives me, again, it becomes more of an administrative side of it. I know that I have to hit 21 hours, and that's what the goal is. So it needs to be in there one way or the other. I need Pocahontas to also give me how many hours is the desired goal. Not that it's the required goal, but a desired goal. To me, it's 21. So if you're doing 21 anyway, and you're paying it at the highest rate possible, basically.
So that's the thing, any money that comes in under 21 hours is merely to offset, as it was proposed before, offset raises. That is not necessarily, it is, but it's not necessarily what it does now. It does.
They're paying almost 1/4 of the police budget. 400 and some thousand, right? So it's almost 100,000 is what the split is by all the money that's come in.
You're saying that 40,000 per week is what you're totaling to get that number?
No. I'm saying so 40,000 plus. So we had a $62,000 request, and I've got another 20, so that's 80, 85. Okay, so we're about 90,000. So we're getting 90,000 back. So I don't know what my final number was, John, but so it's 20%, maybe 1/5 of the police budget back for our taxpayers.
Right, I get what you're saying, and everything's breaking even when it comes to money. I get that. But at the end of the day, the citizens of Pocahontas are still out 31 more hours of coverage that they would have had before that.
But how do I go, but so then I need guideposts then on, so if I've got an officer that spends 4 hours over in Gilmore City, we didn't get reimbursed for that time that Dalton was over in Gilmore City.
And that's where I don't know if I ever got to this point, but if it's merely, Mason, this is not personal, but Mason has a deal here that he's dealing with and he wants Nick to come just for extra eyes, extra hands, extra help, whatever that may be. That's not a situation where it's emergent and you're calling all agencies to come. And I think there's a very clear distinction when that happens. And if you're calling all agencies.
But you're assuming we call them, we don't call them. That's what the dispatcher assigns us those. We don't sit back and say every time. A dispatcher makes that decision.
No, we don't.
They have several times.
We have several times, yes. But on another chance, there's a lot of times where the officer just says, hey, can I go?
Tip.
I know, but you didn't even give us a time to speak today, so.
I wasn't in charge of the agenda, but.
Special meetings are not really required.
So
the issue here is that, I mean, I listen to the radio and I know, I don't listen to it on personal, I have it home or on when Mitch is home for fire calls. But in any general sense, an ambulance needs to go to Rolf. They're gonna call Rolf's medic crew. If Rolf's medic crew doesn't answer after 2 pages, then they call Pocahontas.
No,
and that's what it should be.
No, they dispatch them immediately.
Same with fire. If there's a big fire in the middle of the day in Havelock and none of Havelock's officers are going, then they'll call their surrounding towns to come help. Versus, if there is a large structure fire and they know that they need multiple agencies, yes, they'll call multiple agencies at once. And that's the clear distinction that I think exists, that you can either A, apply to the liability issue like we mentioned earlier, in that if this is a situation where this agreement didn't exist and we would call to back each other up either way, then yes, your liability would still fall under your respective city. Just like this, you're hourly, you don't get to bill us because we came to help you out because multiple agencies came to help you out.
So I went to 2 stabbing calls and in one case officers showed up, but I was never dispatched any assistance. I was at the first one asked later, 13 minutes into the call, whether or not I wanted assistance. But I was never dispatched anybody and I didn't take any. But that's a pretty serious call, right? So, but that's because I know how to handle it, right? I mean, so that's what I'm saying. Is you're making an assumption based upon what we think is that we can't. You can't, that's not going to be clear enough to say, oh, well, this time, because they dispatched everybody. I don't control who they dispatch, and I do not, Jessica and I have talked about it, like, we do not, if they want to send everybody, they can send everybody, but we don't always need everybody. And the same thing goes to county calls. I mean, so that's, like you said, so it's not that's not good in practice.
You also hold the ability to disregard people if you don't need anybody, correct?
You can, but you're just, so.
But you can.
Well,
right?
I can disagree, but a lot of times we don't.
Okay, and that's fine.
But then do we really need it?
Getting back.
So, I mean, I need to synthesize through that because I just want to make sure police operations is its own subtleties. And that's my concern there is that I just don't want an assumption made because I see a lot more open liabilities that we could talk about for 3 hours with using that example. So that's my concern.
So I'm hearing this point, and bring me back if I'm wrong. So we have this agreement that has up to 21 hours, or 21 hours, right? 21 hours. And then I'm hearing a proposal, possibly for discussion, of take that out and do a little bit different reimbursement.
I would think both cities would be appreciative of an agreement that reflects the services they're actually getting provided, and that's exactly what it does. You bill for the services you're providing to the other.
And then I'm also hearing about just some legal changes in some different sections, right, Ryan? Possibly to consider.
Potentially, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah. So
Sorry, did you review this last year?
No.
It was the city attorney last year.
Oh, did your city attorney review it last year?
I don't know what was it.
okay.
I was told no, but that's.
That wasn't my responsibility, so that's our city code doesn't allow me to send.
Sorry, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to.
So I'm just wondering, as it's about 10 to 7, I'm just thinking we should kind of figure out what our proposal is or what's our
What's your
Plan moving forward.
Yeah, what's the, because we obviously have to approve or not approve tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the signing of the resolution with Lawrence with any amendments down the road that can be, if you can come up with a better and get it written out so we can understand it and see it, we can have things changed in the future. I do would like to have at least a meeting with the group, say quarterly. So if there's any problems come up,
The city group or your 2080 group?
the committee group, right? The committee group. So if any problems come up, but I make a motion to assign it and want to sit down, come up with something better, go back and forth, get it into a meeting with the group and move forward with what we've been doing until.
Can I clarify or ask, with that motion on the table, what is the expected, I don't know if I saw it, but I know that amendments can be made, but what is the effective date that they?
It's both agreed, and I'd have to look it up too.
You have to give them, I think you have to file them 30 days before the effective date with the Secretary of State at a minimum, if I remember right.
Yeah, any amendment, modification, or notice of termination of this agreement shall be filed with Iowa Secretary of State within 30 days. So that just says when it needs to be filed.
I would just say as long as, sorry, council, this is just me. I would say in there.
There's an amendment section.
I would say, like, if you have an issue with it, bring it to your council, bring it to your 28E, bring it to us. I mean, I think communication, we've proven, is key to moving forward and achieving success with all partnerships within the county, not just us and for the citizens. But if you have a problem, we're more than willing to hear it out and talk about it at prospective council meetings and move forward and make changes as we see fit. This is in its baby stages. I don't think anyone's like, yes, this is how we operate for the full year.
Any amendment approved by both council will take immediate effect.
It
You
says,
can even change the amendment sections.
the amendment section says during the term of this agreement, the parties may mutually amend the terms of the agreement without terminating the entire agreement. Any amendments must be in writing, approved by both councils, and must be signed by all parties hereto and filed with the Iowa State Secretary.
So I'll just put this out there. I think that's a good idea either, because if it's subject to their approval, and if it's something we want to change, if they don't approve it, we don't have the ability to do that.
We have the ability to cancel the contract.
Right, and I second the motion so we can get it.
Okay, so motion by Cody, seconded by Grover. This is pertaining to, well, I guess your motion needs to be pertaining to the resolution to accept it.
Yeah, to sign the resolution.
Okay, so motion to sign resolution 24, 2026, again made by Cody, seconded by Ryan. So we need to go and do roll calls. So we'll start. Ryan.
Aye.
Kim. Aye. Cody.
Aye.
Wes.
No.
Me. I would also vote no for
Wes,
that.
you can't, you gotta abstain since you're working for the county, don't you?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you know, Ryan?
I don't know. I don't know if that's considered a conflict for the purposes of this.
Working for the sheriff?
According to the county attorney and the Iowa League of Cities, it does not. So,
Regardless, the motion passes because it's 3-2. So, motion or resolution 24 is adopted.
I want to vote again just to say it's debt-free.
Nick actually printed me, while we were sitting here, our city attorney sent me a new resolution, with some of his verbiage that I would just ask my council to, approve rather than the one that was sent to you. I don't know if this is like the one that I sent you and Cody, if you copied that for yours. Okay, this is what our city attorney added, just some different language to it. So I don't know if you want to recopy ours, or not copy if you would like to use that as a document. I'm not offering it if you'd like.
You open to working with our attorney? Yeah. Hammer out the stuff that's hammerable.
I forwarded
think
the
it's
email
good.
that Alex sent me, so he would have your contact information and I can refer.
Yeah, I've worked with them before. I don't think it'd be an issue.
I think that works for me anyway.
And we can include Steph and Jason in on the emails
Absolutely.
for insurance and liability as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you've been great. So
Yes.
we appreciate the cooperative.
So you just want to do a quick vote?
Oh yeah, I would just need you to ask for.
I need a motion to accept resolution 3526, correct?
Yes.
The approval of 2080. I need a roll call.
Or you need a motion in a second first.
No, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 35-26.
Second. Motion and a second. This is roll call moment. Aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Lauren, you still there?
I'm here and Michael is aye.
Okay, that's three. Anyone else still on the line?
Nope, Hannah had to step on.
Okay, we have 3 votes. Motion prevails.
Thank you.
Alright, so motion to adjourn. Motion made. Brian, seconded by. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Oh, right, bring it back.
It's okay, Ryan, I know where to find you.
Lauren, do you approve adjourning?
I'll make it
I
a signature.
miss legal aspect every day, but
Speaking of that, we still have Terry.
I went medical instead.
The other one agreed that Terry shown I might actually need somebody there.
Okay, and just a real quick, so then we had an incident at the post office there too. We tried, and we got all, he got actually, and then we actually filed a state charge against him for disorder because he was on there screaming at the postal people there too. Get stuff at the
Could be a
door.
federal charge.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, just let me know. Try to figure out when that hearing is. Just let me know.
Okay.
I'll probably just need somebody there.
That's, we'll get you someone, Ryan.
Yes, but I don't think I saw those. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks for coming.
You'll still sign.
Home glory.
Well, actually, well, just kind of right. That's how.
So then this is an operation question that I need to ask purely because I know how this will be perceived. Does this reduce his ability to do whatever he wants? Okay. Is there something I can reference that states that? Oh, I appreciate it.
Check with the attorney or the lead, but no, nothing. You're signing it doesn't keep her. You're at the meeting, so you're the one that has to sign it.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Would you agree with that, Hillary? And that by signing this, this does not negate any powers that the mayor would hold over any decision.
What would she have?
In terms to, I mean, I can't.
If she wants to veto it.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, she's not here. Oh, she wants to veto it.
No, it doesn't.
I would say no, but I would double check. But you mean by you signing it?
Yeah, I mean,
I would just have, this is probably not even pertinent to the conversation, but I'd have a strong opinion if she tried to veto it when she wasn't at the meeting. And she's not at the meeting because she's on vacation, and she has every right to be on vacation.
right, yeah, for sure. And I can't dictate what she does or doesn't do. That's not on me to, but I also wouldn't feel comfortable.
How about this? I would say, I was gonna say, as from my side, if Rod wasn't here and Hannah was running it, I would still have Hannah sign this irregardless because my council voted. My mayor does not hold power at this time. My council held the power to sign the agreement, therefore who was resigning over the meeting must sign it, and if somebody else wants to come in, if she wants to come in and veto it, then she has that right. I
think my interpretation of the code would be the same thing in that she would still hold her powers in the time frame if she chose to enact it. Is it something just so that we are completely squeaky clean if I have even 24 hours to just call Ryan and have a verified conversation with our city attorney that he would agree? Is that an issue? It would still be signed tomorrow at the latest if I give him I could probably call him when we leave here and stop it in the morning.
It's the same thing as when we submit the minutes.
Right.
You're gonna submit them as mayor pro tem.
Yeah, I would say he would still, I would direct my mayor pro tem to sign it because the council took the action.
Right.
Irregardless, that's not on you, you're signing on behalf of the council because your council took the action.
Yes, yes,
That's mine.
yes, exactly.
I think from what I know of the code, I think that supports what both of you are saying, and so I think that would be.
If you're not comfortable signing it, that's completely your call too.
I think with it being my first meeting, with it being such a contentious situation, I just think that because there is the time to have that conversation to back up legally, maybe that's the safest approach. It's not that I don't trust either of you.
And again, you need to be comfortable in what you do, but that's why we had you here as a pro temp,
Yeah.
is to represent the council and to finalize the vote.
Yeah.
And so that's your role that you're here for.
Because irregardless it passed. Irregardless,
Yeah,
that
that's-
is in effect.
Right.
So all you're doing is saying, yes, it passed.
Yes.
I'm
Exactly.
validating what I wrote down that people voted for.
Exactly, that's exactly what you're doing.
Did you want to sign the agreement on my behalf or no?
I don't want to sign the agreement.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
That I'm not making that call. I know I signed it. I will. I do know it is our responsibility to file it. So
Yeah.
it's not an agreement until it's filed. So.
And I'll still have that conversation with Brian tomorrow, just to see what his viewpoint on it is. I just feel,
Put in this one.
should anything be raised, especially like the validity of it later down the road or anything along those lines, I feel like if we have that conversation with Brian documented, maybe it stands a little bit better on.
Tammy, yeah, she's coming. From 8 until 10. At 10, she has to be at the library.
Yes, 10:45. Didn't matter. Yes, yeah, okay.
So she'll come in.
Okay.
There's things we can have her do.
For sure. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Nice to kind of meet you.
Yes, thanks. Okay, are you the Janot from
I am
G-Works or
yes.
City? Okay, Joe has said so many things